Hello, welcome to Gurukul's Cat 100 series, a series that's designed specifically to take you from your study room to the corporate boardroom. I am Prady Sharma, and this is Verbal Mastery with Prady. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be covering a few verbal ability questions. So, if you want to take this up as a test, all you've got to do is go on to www.thegurukul.org.in and sign up for the 100 Days to Cat test series. Now, this is a free test series that's been designed to make sure that you stay consistent with your CAT 2025 prep and crack CAT 2025 this year itself. So, without any further ado, let's go into the questions. Now, this is your first question of the day. Pause the video here, solve it, and then we'll go into the second question. This is your second question of the day. Pause the video here, solve it, and then we'll go into the third question. This is your third question of the day. Pause the video here, solve it, and then we'll go into the fourth question. This is your fourth question of the day. Pause the video here, solve it, and then we'll go into the last question of the day. This is your fifth and last question of the day. Pause the video here, solve it, and comment below the answers to all these questions so that we can check how many of these answers you've gotten correct. Let's get into the answer explanations now. Question says, the current moment in world's history is a painful one. Open societies are in crisis and various forms of dictatorships and mafia states exemplified by Vladimir Putin's Russia are on the rise. So what does it say? That right now it's a very, very terrible situation that we are all in. Open societies meaning, societies where democracy is there and right to free speech is there, freedoms of that sort are there. They're all suffering a lot, and those societies which are kind of dictatorships. Okay, one example is the one that he has presented as Vladimir Putin's Russia, or on the rise. So these societies are thriving, whereas the democracies are coming down. In the United States, President Donald Trump would like to establish his own mafia-style state, but cannot because of the Constitution and the other institutions, and vibrant civil society won't allow it. Not only is the survival of an open society in question, the survival of entire civilization is at stake. Now, he goes further to say that yes, Donald Trump also wants to do this, but it's not possible to do it because of the instruments that are there in the United States. And with all this being in place, it's not only the question about how open societies would survive, but the entire civilization is at stake altogether. The rise of such leaders such as Kim Jong-un in North Korea and Trump in the US have much to do with this. Both seem willing to risk a nuclear war in order to keep themselves in power, but the root cause goes even deeper. Mankind's ability to harness force of nature, both constructive and destructive purposes, continues to grow, while our ability to govern ourselves properly fluctuates and is now at a low ebb. So ebb is nothing but a tide. Okay, so what's happening over here? He's saying that the problem is not only with these people. Okay, these people are ready to risk everything. They're ready to go into a nuclear war just to keep themselves in power. But the root cause over here is much deeper. The root cause is mankind's ability to harness the forces of nature. Okay, we can do it for both constructive and destructive reasons, but right now the destructive is on the rise. Okay, we're not able to govern ourselves properly. So these are the ideas. Yes, now let's look at the options. So option number 1 says, Putin in Russia, Trump in the US, and Kim Jong-un in North Korea put our civilization and open society at risk with their craze for power and threats of nuclear war. The root cause lies in our inability to govern ourselves combined with destructive capabilities of technology. Fair enough. Looks like the ideas that has come in the passage have come in this option also, but why are we putting so many examples, okay, in a summary? Usually our summaries, as we've learned, should not have too many examples. It should contain more of ideas. Second thing, here he says, the inability to govern ourselves. But this is extreme, right? According to me, this is a little extreme because he's only talking about inability to govern ourselves properly. Right. So because of that, I'll just keep this aside for now. I'm not going to conclude this as my answer. I'm going to go and look at the other ones also. The current moment in world history is a painful one because of the rise of dictatorships and mafia states like Russia, US, and North Korea. Okay, fair enough. Their threat of nuclear war arises from their craze for power and the destructive technologies at their disposal. Now again, it is not only that the destructive technologies are at their disposal, but it is that they're not able to govern ourselves properly. That idea is nowhere coming in this option whatsoever. So definitely B is not going to be my answer. Now let's go to C. The current rise of dictatorships and mafia states threatens not only open society but also the survival of the civilization. That's the first idea that we get from the passage. Good. As these regimes are willing to risk a nuclear war, this broad enough to include all of these, which is perfect. The root cause lies in our ability to govern ourselves properly, which is now outweighed by our destructive technologies. Yes, we have a lot of destructive technologies and we are not able to actually govern ourselves well enough. So this captures all the essential points, essential ideas of the passage. So this might be a very good answer for us to go ahead. Now let's look at D. The current rise of dictatorships and mafia states, Russia, US and North Korea, puts the survival of our entire civilization at stake with threats of nuclear war as they want to remain in power. Our inability to govern ourselves is at its lowest ebb compared to the destructive potential of science. Again, nowhere has he compared the destructive potential of science with our inability to govern ourselves. He's saying that yes, we have a lot of destructive power, and that's rising because we are not able to govern ourselves. So this clearly is not what he's talking about as an idea in the passage. It's just using the same words as in the passage to confuse you. So steer clear of these kind of options. The best options amongst A, B, C and D would be C. So that will be my answer. Let's go to the second question. Now in the second question, alongside Paul Ree, Nietzsche came to the conviction that values, whether moral, political, aesthetic or even metaphysical, were a function of the drives which were themselves conditioned subconsciously throughout a long historical process. So basically what did these two guys, Paul Ree and Nietzsche, come to a conviction, that means conclusion? He said that the values are a function of our drives, that means our needs and wants. And again, these needs and wants are conditioned into us. That means we are programmed with these needs and wants because of a long historical process. So old religious and Platonic beliefs in good and evil as static metaphysical entities were for both Ree and Nietzsche to be replaced with a naturalistic and developmental account about how present-day values derive from a convoluted process of practical and often egotistical considerations. So basically what he's telling in all of this, he's saying that yes, whatever the old values were, okay, they need to be replaced. They need to be aligned with more real life things from nowadays. Okay, we cannot always look at how the things were in the past and just put them as an ascription onto our needs. Now the needs and desires and everything of people are changing and we need to adapt according to that particular thing. So over here I get two main ideas and let's check which of these options can give me those two ideas. First one, A. Paul Ree and Nietzsche believed that the values were not static metaphysical entities, great, but were a result of long environmental and psychological conditioning. Fair enough. Okay, I understand that both of these values are being presented, so this is a good option so far, but let me read through other options also and then check. For both Paul Ree and Nietzsche, the metaphysical values of good and evil differed from the old religious Platonic belief in that they were static entities. Again, this also kind of covers a lot of the aspects, but compared to A and B, I find that the depth in A of the ideas that have been present in the passage is higher, so I'll remove B for now. See, alongside Paul Ree, Nietzsche believed that values were static metaphysical entities like good and evil and independent of practical and egotistical considerations. This I can very clearly say is an opposite answer. Over here he's saying that these values were static, but Nietzsche and both Ree and Nietzsche, they believe that they were not static, right? So this is an opposite answer which we can definitely remove. Now D. Paul Ree and Nietzsche held that the Platonic beliefs in good and evil as static metaphysical entities that replace the naturalistic and developmental account about how values were derived. Again, he's just put in a few words, okay, that are there in the passage, but these words are put in such a way that they don't actually bring out any plausible meaning whatsoever. Paul Ree and Nietzsche held that Platonic beliefs in good and evil as static metaphysical entities. So they didn't think of them as static metaphysical entities altogether, right? So here also it's opposite, but the words are combined in such a way that they don't literally mean anything at all. So I'm going to remove D. The best possible answer for us now becomes A, which should be our correct answer. Let's get into the third question. Now, the Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The same principle applies to dialogue. Dialogue is, trying to reason with others, which requires that we listen to different perspectives and always keep an open mind. Great. So it starts with Epictetus and his quote, and he says that the same kind of a principle that the Epictetus has mentioned kind of applies to the principle of dialogue or whatever of dialogue as well. This means heeding the public's grievances and working together towards collective solutions. Only joint responses will suffice to tackle the complex problems we face. The indispensability of this multi-stakeholder dialogue to global progress should be the guiding ethos. Now, what is ethos, my dear friends? Ethos is nothing but a cultural spirit. Okay, this is nothing but a cultural spirit, right? So the principle of 1 mouth and 2 ears applies to dialogues. The guiding ethos to global progress is heeding the public grievances multi-stakeholder dialogue with an open mind and working for collective solution. Now, over here, the first part of it is perfect. Yes, the principle of one mouth and 2 ears applies to the dialogue. Now, the guiding ethos to global progress is heeding the public grievances, multi-stakeholder dialogue with an open mind and working for collective solutions. All of this seemed great, but he's missing out the causation that's brought out in the paragraph. So, for now, I'm going to keep this aside as my good answer, but if I do find something better than this, I'm definitely going to choose that. B. The fact that we have only one mouth and 2 ears implies that we must listen more than we speak. Multi-stakeholders dialogue with an open mind for joint responses and collective solutions is indispensable for the global progress. Now, over here, when we are looking at heeding to the public, this multi-stakeholder dialogue and all of these, he's just talking about this as a guiding ethos. But guiding ethos for what and why should we do it? That's coming a little better in B. So compared to A, I think B is still a better answer. So I'm going to mark B for now, and then I'm going to look at the other two as well. Epictetus principle 2 dialogue, multi-stakeholder dialogue, heeding public grievances and perspectives, and working towards collective solutions to complex problems should be our guiding ethos. Now, first things first. It's not Epictetus principle to dialogue. Epictetus gave a principle which can also be applied to dialogue. So very clearly this is misleading an option for us. Okay, so I'm going to remove C. Now D. Epictetus principle of listen more than you speak applies to dialogue. Great. Heeding public's grievances and different perspectives and working towards collective solutions is indispensable for global progress. It has all the ideas that B has with the same causations that B has, but it also tells us who gave it. So this adds a little bit of accuracy to our option, and that is why we are going to take B off the chart and D as our correct answer. Right? Now let's go to the fourth question. Now, just by looking at 5 options or 5 statements, do not assume this to be an odd man out question. This is actually a ParaJumble question. Now, if we look at this, let's try to read and understand what's happening. The British empresses following Locke subscribe to a tabula rasa theory. Tabula rasa means an empty mind or an empty stone table. Okay, denying innate ideas and maintaining that our knowledge must ultimately be based on sense experience. That means we keep on gathering, knowledge from the experiences that we have. Okay, fine. Here he's talking about British empresses and Locke. Okay. Descartes and his followers were convinced that a priori knowledge of the existence of God as an infinitely perfect being was possible and favored what Kant would later call the ontological argument as a way to establish it. Okay, fair enough. Now here they are talking about Descartes and his beliefs of, or the beliefs of his followers. The continental rationalists following Descartes subscribed to a theory of a priori innate ideas that provide a basis for universal and necessary knowledge. So again, over here, this feels like the introduction of the Descartes ideas. Okay, so I'm just going to mark intro over here, because over here he's telling me that these are the people who are following this, right, the same way that I see that British empresses are following Locke, correct? By contrast, Locke and his followers spurned such a priori reasoning and resorted to empirical approaches such as the cosmological argument and the teleological arguments of the design arguments. So now think of it over here. Descartes and his followers spoke about ontological arguments, and by contrast, Locke and his followers spurned cosmological arguments and design arguments. So clearly I can say that 2 and 4 should be connected with each other. Now let's look at 5. Before Kant, modern European philosophy was generally split into 2 rival camps. Now this looks as a perfect introduction. Why? Because it's telling me about 2 rival camps. Yes. Now what could those rival camps be? Continental rationalists and British empiricists. Yes. So I'm going to put 5 first. Then I'm going to go with 3 and then 1. Why am I talking about 3 and 1? Because here he says that these people were denying innate ideas. That means I should have spoken about innate ideas before somewhere, right? Where am I speaking about it? Over here in the third one. So definitely it's going to be 5, 3, 1 and 2, 4. So the correct answer should be 5 as the introduction, 3, 1 as a pair and 2, 4 as the continuation. Now I'm using the sequence over here, right? So the correct answer will be this for sure. Let's go to the last question of the day. Such a failure erodes the gains that made by many communities because lost natural capital contributes to material losses. Fair enough. My first question is such a failure. Which failure are we talking about? Okay, so definitely 1 cannot be my introduction. The impact of such a terrible loss must be seen against the backdrop of Northeast representing a global biodiversity hotspot. Again, impact of such a terrible loss. Which loss am I talking about? And where did I even speak about Northeast? Yes, the Environmental Ministry's report has calculated a cumulative loss of forests in Mizoram, Nagaland and Arunachal of nearly 1200 square kilometers. Now this whole thing together could be thought of as Northeast. Yes, and this loss could be actually seen as against the backdrop of Northeast, which is representing the global biodiversity hotspot. So maybe 3 and 2 could be connected. We'll see. So fourth one says, naturally environmental economists have come to regard the calculation of national accounts of wealth and development as weak. Okay, fine. Why are they thinking that the national accounts of wealth and development are weak? Why are these environmental economists thinking that way? Because governments do not add the benefits of the functions such as flood control and climate moderation. So there is some value for the forest, but that value has no speck of flood control and climate moderation added to it. So they don't think that these forests are helping us in flood control and climate moderation. That is why these evaluations are so low. Any gains achieved through immediate or remediation programs in these states cannot compensate for it adequately. Now the first thing is, when I say these states, I know it is these parts. So definitely 3, 2 and 5 can go together. Yes, this much we can understand. Now, what is happening over here? Any gains that are achieved through remediation programs cannot compensate for it adequately. Correct? Now, why can they not compensate for it adequately? Because the environmental economists are not able to see the value of forests in flood control and climate moderation. So definitely 4 can go with 5. Now, obviously, such a failure, the failure of the environmental economists or the governments to take this into consideration, is eroding the gains that are made by many communities. So my last statement would be 1. So the perfect answer should be 3, 2, 5, 4 and 1. Now, if you watch this video till here, please hit that like button because that motivates us a lot to keep bringing these kind of videos for you every single day. Share this video with a friend who wants to prepare for CAT 2025 and does not have enough practice material. I'll see you in the next video.
Hope you enjoyed learning from today's session.
This series is designed to help you with your CAT preparation and practice daily. We are with you in this journey.
To watch the next video, click here. And to watch Gurukul's CAT 100 series, study room to boardroom, the entire playlist, click here.
If you learned from today's session, like, share and subscribe.